Good evening, everyone. My name is Amelia Amaro, and I'm the Executive Director of the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Grimsby, Lincoln, and West Lincoln Chambers of Commerce, thank you all very much for joining us this evening. Our federally elected officials shape policies that impact not only Canada and the world, but directly influence the economic prosperity of West Niagara. As your local chambers of commerce, we believe it's our role to help citizens make informed choices about who will represent our businesses, families, and communities. We're committed to being the voice of our members at every level of government. That means identifying key issues, connecting members with government resources, and building strong relationships with municipal, provincial, and federal representatives. I'd like to take a moment to remind everyone here tonight and everyone watching at home that the Chamber of Commerce is not government funded. We are a not-profit, member-driven, and powered entirely by the businesses right here in this community. These are the businesses that fund the staff who plan and host events like this one. These are the people who volunteer their time, their energy, and resources to keep our community informed and connected. So I encourage you to visit their shops, use their services, and support them however you can. And above all, I ask that we treat each other with respect, including the volunteers and staff who make events like this possible, and also with kindness and respect. We're proud to host tonight's Federal All-Candidates Night as part of our commitment to civic engagement. Running for office is no small task, and we sincerely thank each candidate for stepping up to serve our community. We're also excited to share that tonight's All Candidates event is being live streamed on the Next Generation YouTube channel. Please join me in thanking Vision Lux, who is providing this service once again free of charge. If you know someone who couldn't be here but wanted to watch, please head over to either Grimsby's, Lincoln's, or West Lincoln's Instagram to get the live stream link to send to them. We've got a lot to cover this evening. I want to make sure that we stay on schedule, so I'd like to introduce our moderator, Samuel Millet. Samuel is the visionary co-founder of the Future Voters Summit, a first-ever initiative born from the belief that Canada's future, particularly Gen Z, must be built on solutions, critical thinking, and a deep understanding of policy. In addition to that, Samuel is the host of the television show My Generation. He engages in deep, thought-provoking conversations with policy experts, politicians, industry leaders, and other influential figures. So without further ado, let's begin.
Please save the applause for the candidates. That's why you're here tonight. But I cannot tell you how excited I am to be here. I eat this stuff up. I love it. I live and I breathe it. And I'm sure all of you do, and you're all eager to see what these lovely candidates have to say for us. Just as much as they're excited, so am I. So we'll kick things off tonight so we can stay on schedule, get your questions asked, and make sure that we make everybody's voices heard. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce the candidates that have joined us. First off, we have Dean Allison, Progressive Conservative Party of Canada. We have Dave Bilsma, Christian Heritage Party of Canada. And we have Jennifer Korstanji, Liberal Party of Canada. Invitations were also extended to all registered candidates, including Justin Abando, New Democratic Party of Canada, and Ryan Anderson, People's Party of Canada, who either did not respond in time or did not respond at all. Now, of course, what is a good little debate without some ground rules, of which I have to go over? First off, candidates are requested to be respectful, of course, and courteous of one another. This forum is being provided by the West Niagara Chambers of Commerce for the benefit of all of you in our community. We very much appreciate your willingness to come here tonight. Audience members are similarly asked, no call-outs or any yelling or any interruptions, please. If you want to submit a question for consideration, which I encourage you do, please do so by visiting the submission table right at the back. Now, I do have to make it very clear, until candidate introductions are over, which we complete around 7:15, you have till submission. Please keep any applause as well to a minimum, as we have a tight agenda and we want to hear from as much of these candidates as possible. Now, at the conclusion of the debate, we have asked all the candidates to be available at the back. So feel free to spark a conversation with them or dig a little deeper into something that they discussed. Answers will be timed, make things very clear. When you have 10 seconds remaining, you will get a warning with an overhead light turning yellow. It's practically impossible to miss. There you go. When your time is expired, the light above will turn red. Gentlemen, can we get the light red? There you go. Yeah, it will scream at you, so just, keep an eye. I will be happily interrupting you if you do keep going after the red, so I'm not the rude one here. Just, stick to the red. We'll be rotating through which candidates answers first to ensure fairness tonight, alphabetically in reverse from left to right. Tonight we have wild cards in effect, which is something new. Now, wild cards, I have them here, strictly say wild cards. You can't miss them. And basically what the wild card is a candidate will either be able to promote a rebuttal or extend 30 seconds onto their own speaking time. The rebuttal is 30 seconds. The additional speaking time is 30 seconds as well. You will have the ability to use the wild cards between rounds 2 and 5. 2 and 5. That's it, that's all. And if you don't get to use them, then you don't get to use them. If a candidate wishes to use a wild card, you just simply hold it up. Only one wild card can be used per question, so please no stacking of any wild cards. It seems like a decent strategy. Wild card time limits will be enforced by myself and the timekeeper as well. And once used, a wild card can be placed onto the discard area. You can even just flip it over and put it to the left side, okay? Now, we've got the ground rules out of the way, so we'll kick things off. And like any good debate, we start with an introduction of each individual. So alphabetically by last name from left to right, each candidate, you'll be given 45 seconds to give you or hers opening remarks. As indicated, you will be given a 10-second warning, and at a 45 seconds, I will call and you will be asked to stop. So you have 45 seconds to give your opener, okay? We'll start with Dean Allison. Dean, why don't you take it away?
Thanks to the West Niagara Chambers for hosting this all-candidates debate tonight. To everyone in the room, let me begin by saying what I'm hearing, and that is this election is the most important election in the life of our country. I want to ask you two questions. Are you better off now than you were 10 years ago? And are our communities safer than they were 10 years ago? We have just come through the worst 10 years in our history thanks to the Liberal government and its leadership. And while Mr. Trudeau is no longer its leader, the new leader was Mr. Trudeau's trusted advisor, and he has the same inept team around him. What we as Canadians need is change. And what the Conservatives are offering is not only to put Canada first, but to do so while making the lives of all Canadians better.
Perfect. Thank you, Dean. And Dave, I'm going to throw it over to you. Dave, go ahead.
32 years ago, as a single young man fresh out of Mac, I was discouraged by the moral, social, and cultural decline in Canada. I found a fledgling CHP, and the focus of the policies and principles resonated with me. Pro-family, pro-life, smaller government, and free market. I threw my hat into the ring. Today, Sylvia and I operate a small manufacturing business, have 9 children, 9 grandchildren, and this is my 9th time running for what I believe is still the most relevant party in Canada today. The CHP upholds the preamble of our nation's constitution, which states that Canada was founded on principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. Families are under attack. Strong families equal a strong nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. And Jennifer. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here to speak about what many are calling one of the most important elections in our nation's history. This election is about more than party lines. It's about our shared vision for Canada's future. It's about how we confront the challenges ahead and how we strengthen our country for generations to come. There's a lot of talk about the need for change, and I won't argue with that. As a lifelong resident of Grimsby and an elected councillor, I see firsthand how badly Niagara West needs new energy, new ideas, and a new approach. For me, public service is personal. I've spent over a decade of advocating for people with disabilities as a Special Olympics coach, a nonprofit founder, and a voice at the municipal table. I bring that same passion and diligence to every decision I make. I do the work, I do the research, I ask the hard questions because our community deserves nothing less.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay. Now, the question submission window has officially closed. So with that being said, we're going to kick off our rapid fire rounds of questioning. Now, let me reiterate here. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to respond to each question. Wild cards may now be used. Again, answers will be timed, and when you have 10 seconds remaining, you will get a warning with the yellow overhead light. And when your time has expired, a red light will appear overhead. Now, please take note that each candidate will be asked the same question. So candidates, please take note of the question. Again, your cooperation is appreciated, okay? I'll start with the first question, which we're going to throw over to Dave. What are your party's plans to stimulate economic growth in Canada and better leverage our country's natural and domestic resources for global markets? Dave, your time starts now.
Thank you very much. Well, obviously, we've been selling our natural resources to all the countries of the world without developing them ourselves. Do you know that today aluminum is exported into America and it's brought to us back as beer cans? We do not even develop our own beer cans. Just a small example of how we have failed to develop our own resources and our own manufacturing, and that needs to change and be stimulated in our own country on this side of the border. Thank you very much.
Perfect. And then we're going to throw it over to Jennifer. Jennifer, go ahead.
Thank you. So we planned a new trade diversification corridor. This will build the infrastructure to help get our trade across from province to province. We're putting money into our ports, so we are able to export out to other countries. We are also putting money into the housing industry, so we will create thousands of jobs, building homes with Canadian lumber, with Canadian workforce. We are putting money into the auto sector so that we can create jobs.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Dean, wild card for Dean. Dean, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Now, what we've said we'll do is build a national energy corridor to make sure that we get our resources to market. We need to build pipelines, we need to develop our LNG, and we need to help our manufacturers, and that means by diversifying our markets. We got one market for oil and gas right now, and that's the United States. We have many countries. We have actually had 9 countries, 9, count them, 9, come and ask for our LNG, and we said, there's not a case. We sell our LNG to the US for $4 per thermal unit. In Europe right now, that price is over $15. So I don't know how you can say there's not a case to be made. And so what we need to do is we need to get our resources to market. We need to build pipelines so they can get there. And as Dave said, we're selling our oil at a discount because they're our only person buying it. 30% discount in some cases. So if you think of that, we need to do a better job of producing, refining, and getting our resources to market right here in Canada.
Thank you, Dean. All right. And I will say, I know everybody appreciates the lovely responses, but like I said, if you can keep the applause to a minimum, I would appreciate it. Okay, we're going to kick off our second question here to Jennifer. Jennifer, what is your position on immigration, particularly in addressing labor and talent shortages, while also balancing concerns about economic uncertainty and affordable housing? Go ahead.
Okay, so I am the daughter of an immigrant. Our entire region was built off Dutch immigrants after the Second World War who brought the greenhouses, and this is why we have the economy we do with the greenhouses. I think that with our aging population, we are going to need a workforce, especially to pay into the CPP. So immigration is good, but we've already capped it, and because of the stresses on the housing crisis and stuff like that.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, and Dean, we're going to throw the second question over to you. Go ahead.
Thank you. We used to bring in around 500,000 immigrants a year and various things, and the system worked. The last number of years it hasn't worked, and the reason has been people have been taking advantage of the system. We have people that say they're coming to go to school, and they indicate to immigration that they are, and then they never actually show up at the school. So there's a number of things that we need to do to make sure that we're matching the economic needs. Employers need people. There's a family reunification program that's also in place, and I think these are some things that we can do a better job on.
Thank you, Dean. And Dave, go ahead. Your time starts now.
The solution to our current housing crisis can be solely addressed by reducing the strain that current immigration levels have put on the demand for homes. Leave it to short-sighted government policy to turn something that was a benefit to the growth of our nation into a disaster for our own young people trying to buy their first homes. The CHP would also eliminate the foreign purchases of homes and farmland that artificially create demand for investment purposes. Thank you.
All right. Dave, thank you. And we're going to kick off onto our third question here. Pretty timely. Canada's GDP is 2.2 trillion in comparison to the United States being 27.4 trillion. With that in mind, are retaliatory tariffs the best option in the current trade war, or are there better alternatives? And to kick things off, we're going to start things with Dean. Dean, your time starts now.
What we need to do is we need to do a better job diversifying our economy. We've done a poor job over the last 10 years. We've had billions of dollars leave our country for other investments. And so we need to do a much better job of securing our own country. One of the things we could look at definitely, and in addition to developing our resources, is also deal with the interprovincial trade barriers. And I think that if we could look at some of these issues, we could first strengthen Canada so we would be in a stronger position to deal with any other country.
All right. And Dave, go ahead, Dave.
I think it's very evident that we could not win a trade war with the United States. That's very evident from the numbers that you provided. So again, it comes back to developing our own manufacturing, developing our own resources on this side of the border, and putting them to market around the world. We have the technology, we have the expertise, but it's lying dormant, and it needs to be invigorated and brought to bear to make Canada competitive in the world again.
Thank you, Dave. And Jennifer, your time starts now.
Thank you. The retaliatory tariffs are going to be used to fund the manufacturing in Canada. So I think having retaliatory tariffs are important to ease the taxpayer. The money has to come from somewhere. And I think in the case of the auto industry, we're going to use those tariffs and put the $2 billion into the auto industry, make our own parts here in Canada, so we will have less need to trade with the United States. And if we do that in every industry, we will become more self-sufficient and independent.
All right, and that wraps up round 2. Now, we have something called our community questions round. So let me go over a couple of the ideas here. In this round, the community questions section, candidates will be asked questions pre-submitted in Chamber's online question portal from the public and the community. Candidates will draw a question from the container and hand the question to Amelia. I have Amelia helping me out here. I will put the questions, Amelia will put the questions back in the container and, of course, shake up the contents. Amelia will bring the question to me after you select the question. I will read it out. I will put it back into the jar, and then you guys' time will start then, okay? Candidates, you will get 45 seconds to answer, and then the next candidate will draw a question. Again, wild cards may be used in this round to either rebuttal for 30 seconds, or you may be able to add 30 seconds to your response. Now, the first candidate to draw an answer, a question is Jennifer Christangi. Go ahead. Got to keep it true and honorable. They can pull their own questions. All right. So, Jennifer, what would your government do to avoid corruption, wasteful spending, and tax avoidance? Your time starts now.
I think transparency is key. A lot of the time, we, as the public, want transparency and communication for our government. So I'd work on improving transparency, access to information, and education to the public.
Thank you. And we're going to throw it over to Dean. So let's see if, there we go, perfect. Oh, Dean here, one sec. Amelia's coming over. Wonderful. Okay, here we go. It has been suggested that funding to the municipalities be based on their ability to boost housing statistics. Is this something your party would support? And if so, how will you address the possibility that municipalities would increase development charges or taxes to replace the lack of funding? Go ahead, Dean.
Yeah, so I agree with the thought process that those that are able to build the houses should get more money, and those that aren't participating in that will probably lose some of that money. There's always a baseline funding there. So we're not talking about that. There was also infrastructure dollars in place. There's over the number of years that I've been elected, we've worked with the formula of a third of the municipality, a third for the provinces, and a third from the feds. I think that's a good model. I think we should make more of that available to small towns, because quite frankly, our riding with the number of towns we have, it can't quite afford all the money that's required on a big infrastructure project, especially with towns with lots of roads and bridges and things like that. But I think we should reward, if we want more housing, we need to reward that.
All right. And of course, Dave, We'll throw it over to Dave to pull the question out of the jar. Okay, Dave, housing is a top concern for Canadians. If elected, what specific actions will your party take to increase housing supply and address the current crisis? Your time starts now.
Again, we recognize that the number one pressure on housing supply is the immigration. Obviously, we would also encourage growth in the trades, having our young people to get a tangible trade. But even that is short-sighted in the sense that if we address the immigration issue, we would be able to have sufficient trades in this country to build the houses that our country needs. And so really at the core of it is the aggressive immigration policies, which, as I said before, turned a good thing into a challenge for our nation.
All right, Dave and Jennifer, we're going to let you pull the next question out of the jar here. All right, same question here. It has been suggested that funding to the municipalities be based on their ability to boost housing statistics. Is this something your party would support? And if so, how will you address the possibility that municipalities would increase development charges or taxes to replace funding? Your time starts now.
I think that incentivizing developers to build with affordable housing units is the way to go. I don't think that punishing municipalities for what they can't build or haven't built is a great idea. I think a lot of municipalities want affordable housing. We need affordable housing, but our developers need the incentive to build it, and this is exactly what we're seeing in Grimsby coming forward. We're going to see about 40 units of affordable housing that are on the proposal right now, and that's because of incentivization to develop for the developers.
Okay, and Dean, we're going to let you pull another question out of the jar. All right. Dean, do you support changes to Canada's current tax structure to reduce wealth inequality? And if so, what specific measures would you propose? Time starts now.
I certainly propose changes to the tax structure. I think people are overtaxed right now. I think we pay far too much in taxes. I think we have very few incentives for small businesses to reinvest their funds. One of the things we said we'd do is do a deferred tax on our capital gains so people can reinvest money. We need to continue to create jobs. It's small and medium enterprises that create jobs. We need to make sure we reduce red tape. We need to make sure that we cut the carbon tax, both the consumer and the industrial carbon tax, because people pay too much money. And we need to make sure that we are able to be competitive. And the way we do that is by making sure we have a less tax burden on individuals. And we've said we'll reduce the tax burden on seniors, on individuals.
Okay, all right, and it looks like we have a wild card. All right, perfect. You can just flip it over there, Dave. Wonderful.
After 40 years of mismanaging taxes, we have left the debt at $1.2 trillion, or so large that we pay $125 million in interest every day. The CHP proposes the abolition of federal income tax and replace it with a well-defined national sales tax called the fair tax. It's a defined term. Canadians could control how much tax they pay by how they purchase, and it increases savings and makes people much more independent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Now, Dave, we're going to let you pull a question out of the jar here. Oh, you're good, Amelia. Okay, same question here. Dave, it has been suggested that funding to the municipalities be based on their ability to boost housing statistics. Is this something your party would support? And if so, how will you address the possibility that municipalities would increase development charges or taxes to replace the lack of funding?
At the end of the day, affordability is the, I guess, paramount paradigm. So if a house is affordable, then it gets bought or sold. Anything that a government does to add money to that is just putting fuel on an already expensive price, because developers will get what they can sell their houses for. And so they just pocket that money, unfortunately. So I think the system is challenging any new monies by the government. Doesn't help the cause. Development charges are there to protect the municipality from aggressive development, and should remain in place as they are. I was a municipal councillor, and it's very vital for the local municipalities to have that kind of control in the development of their own municipalities.
Thank you, Dave. All right, and we're going to jump over to Jennifer here. We have one last round of these types of questions here. Okay, all right, Jennifer, what would your government do to avoid corruption, wasteful spending, and tax avoidance?
Did we already have that one?
Were you asked that
I
question?
feel like
Okay, here. I mean, you can answer it again if you'd like. This is how we keep it nonpartisan, right? Okay, Jennifer, what is your plan to help small businesses thrive in our region? Your time starts now.
Thank you. I think one of the biggest things with small businesses is advertising small businesses and letting the rest of the area and our surrounding areas know that they exist. I think we can sell an experience as municipalities on the different businesses we have, what they offer, and how you can come, spend a day, and shop at multiple businesses. I think specialty stores, which we are very lucky to have in our municipalities, are a big draw and destinations. So I think everything we can do to market them and help assist in their workforce and any funding that we can do, I think will definitely help.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, and we're going to walk over to you, Dean. We're going to let you pull a question out of the jar. All right, okay. Dean, what is your plan to help small businesses thrive in our region? What are the chances of that? Did you already answer that question? No. Then Dean, go ahead.
Could you repeat that again?
Yep, no problem. What is your plan to help small businesses thrive in our region?
Sure. Thanks for the question. So as I mentioned before, and I think it's important to mention that the deferring of capital gains is going to supercharge industry around this country. It is game-changing in terms of what it's able to do for small businesses to be able to reinvest their money. You think of a time when people are dealing with small businesses and trying to reinvest their gains. What ends up happening is it gets taxed away, and then they're left with less money to make that happen. We also need to look at red tape. Red tape is something that constantly actually shows up over and over again, and we've got to find a way to reduce red tape by reducing, and we've committed to reducing regulations. When people want to add more, we're going to reduce 2 to make sure we can get the ease of doing business in a bigger way.
Okay, and we're going to walk over to you, Dave, for the final question in this round. Can never have too much good luck. All right, here's a new one. Dave, do you support the federal carbon tax as it stands? And how would your government ensure both environmental responsibility and affordability for Canadian families and businesses? Your time starts now.
So the CHP believes that carbon dioxide is essential for life and is not a pollutant that needs to be taxed. It is held in equilibrium between plants and humans, and taxing it is as ridiculous as taxing air. This tax has to end. I understand that the government has overspent every year, and the debt is currently at $1.3 trillion, but carbon tax is not the way to correct your error, and all we're doing is penalizing the growth and making us uncompetitive in the world. I'd also like to say the CBC has become a $1.4 billion propaganda machine for the governments. Its bias is demonstrable, and its benefit to Canadian culture has long expired.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you. Okay, we're going to jump into round 4 here. Now, just a reminder, you are not allowed to use your wild cards after round 5. We are nearing that as well. Okay, so in this round, the candidate-to-candidate round, each candidate has the opportunity to ask one other candidate one question, please. Please identify which candidate you are directing your question towards, and then you will have 30 seconds to pose your question. Please ensure that you ask your question within the 30 seconds, or whatever has been said is what they will answer. Candidate to whom the question is directed to will have 45 seconds to respond. Again, wildcards may be used in this round to either rebuttal for 30 seconds or by your current self speaking 30 seconds as well. Answers will be timed, and when you're at 10 seconds, you'll see a yellow light, and when time is up, you'll have a red light, and I will interrupt you. Okay, so with that being said, Dean, we're going to kick things off with you. Who would you like to ask your question to? And then your 30 seconds begins.
Thanks. I'd like to ask Jennifer. We've had recently, Harmony Jewelers has been broken into, armed robbery twice within a couple weeks. We've seen a home invasion in Grimsby Beach and down in Winston. We've never seen these kind of things before. The Violent Crime Severity Index in Niagara is at the highest it's ever been since they started tracking these things in 2009. And armed person calls, so with weapons involved, is increased from 330 to just under 1,000. How will your government fix this?
And Jennifer, you will have 45 seconds to respond starting now.
Thank you. So in the Liberal platform on crime, which I suggest everybody look up because it's very extensive, one of the things we're going to do is toughen the criminal code to make bail laws stricter for violent home invasions, car theft, and human trafficking specifically. For repeat offenders, would now need to convince the court why they need bail instead of prosecution needing to convince that they don't. We're taking multiple measures at the borders, hiring thousands new border agents and K9 and other border security measures to stop the inflow of guns from coming up from the United States. Also on the ports, we are investing into more security measures to stop the inflow of weapons coming in, and we also have the gun registry.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Dean does have a wild card that he's used. So Dean, you're going to have 30 seconds to use your wild card, starting now.
Thank you. You know, the truth is, under this Liberal government, we've seen crime escalate over the last 10 years. Car thefts are up 524% since 2018. I was knocking doors in a neighborhood that had every car broken into. We see that Toronto has a 40% higher personal property crime rate than New York City, as well as Hamilton has ranked higher for property crime than New York City and Detroit. So this is still a concern, and nothing's been done about it in the last 10 years.
Okay, thank you, Dean. We're going to let Dave, we got to keep the applause to a minimum, thanks guys. We're going to let Dave pinpoint who you'd like to ask the question to, and then you're going to have 30 seconds to ask the question, okay?
So I'd like to ask this question to the Liberal candidate, and I did let her peek. Respecting your candidacy and without prejudice, the current Liberal Party has introduced legislation, namely Bill C-4, which will revoke the historical charitable status of churches and religious institutions. A Cardis study has shown a 15 times multiplier in benefit to the community through the soup kitchens and welfare provided by faith groups. If elected, would you oppose this change to religious charities? And if you are not elected, would you pass this concern to your party leadership?
All right, Jennifer, your 45 seconds starts now.
Thank you, and thank you, Dave, for being so gracious to me. I would have to do more research on this. I don't like to make uninformed decisions. I can say that I have worked a lot with Trinity United Church in Grimsby, and I do realize their social action committee and their congregation do a lot of charitable work, and so much so I would say that they would qualify as a charity. And I mean, that's one church that I know. I would like to consult with multiple churches and see what charitable work they actually are doing and how much they're doing before I could make a decision on that.
All right, and we're going to give it back to Dave. Dave, you have 30 seconds. You are using your second wild card, it looks like. Yep, second wild card. Your time starts now.
And thank you. I'd like to just talk about a few other subjects that probably won't make the slate for tonight. The CHP agrees with our NATO obligations that 2% of our national GDP should be spent on defense. Our veterans should also be treated with gratitude and respect and not encouraged to end their lives using MAID or medical assisted in dying. Parents are the primary caregivers and educators of their children. Children are not the property of the state. And all Canadians deserve equal treatment under the law, especially important for those who disagree with recent government over.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks. Okay, and we're going to throw it over to Jennifer. Jennifer, who would you like to ask your question to? and you'll have 30 seconds to ask your question. Your time starts now.
Thank you. I'd like to ask to Dean Allison. And I'd like to ask, Mr. Allison, do you support the proposed NIMBY fine for a municipality that doesn't hit annual 15% growth target?
Okay, and Dean, your time starts now. 45.
Absolutely.
Dean, is that it? All right, we're going to jump over to our fifth round here. Okay, so fifth round audience challenge. We're going to move on to questions submitted by our audience this evening. A reminder, if your question does not get asked, you will have the opportunity to speak to the candidate outside after the debate is over. Now, again, we'll try to get everyone's question in to the candidate. However, we only have so much time. Now, I have here a container with me. Oh, perfect. There we go. Thank you. I'll choose them. Wonderful. And I will read the question aloud. Now, candidates, you will have 45 seconds to respond to these questions. Each candidate, you'll have the opportunity to answer the same question. So I'll pull out a question, and then we'll go in order, okay? All right. Now, again, this is the last round that wildcards can be used, okay? All right, wonderful. Again, you're going to be timed. You have 10 seconds. You see a yellow light, and when it's over, you'll see a red light, and I'll interrupt you. Okay, first off, we're going to have Dave kick things off. I'm going to draw from the jar and see what question we pull here. Okay. Dave, what is your party's stance on Canada's current tax system, and do you believe any reforms are needed to make it more equitable? Dave, your time starts now.
So as I already mentioned, that the CHP proposes an abolition of our income tax status, or income tax collecting system, and replace it with a fair tax, which is a defined national sales tax that would allow the control of the taxes that people pay in the purchases that they make, and it encourages savings, and it doesn't tax private property, i.e. income. I would also say that, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Jennifer, we're going to throw the same question to you. I'll reread it for you. No problem. What is your party's stance on Canada's current tax system? And do you believe any reforms are needed to make it more equitable? Your time starts now.
Thank you. I'm always searching for equity, so I do believe that we could improve it and make it a little bit more efficient so we could have more equity with the way that we tax people. I think that any way we can save people money, such as saving the cost to get into museums and parks and rail for young children, will also offset costs and affordable living for Canadians.
Okay, Jennifer and Dean, I'm going to reread the question for you. What is your party's stance on Canada's current tax system, and do you believe any reforms are needed to make it more equitable?
Thanks for the question. I believe that we need to eliminate the industrial and the consumer carbon tax because people are struggling. We've seen over 2 million people across Canada visit food banks last month. We've seen people choosing between heating and eating. We've never seen so many encampments in our lives, and this has all been under this Liberal government. So part of the problem is that people are just taxed way too much. And then if we look at the people that create jobs, which is the small and medium-sized businesses, we see how difficult it is for them because of regulation, red tape, but also because of excessive tax burden. And we need to do something for them so the job creators can help create more jobs.
Thank you, Dean. All right, and we're on to the second question here. We're going to start off with Jennifer. Jennifer, do you agree that all Canadians should be provided with suicide prevention regardless of age, disability, or mental health? Your time starts now.
Just to clarify, to be provided with suicide prevention?
That's correct. Yes, suicide prevention.
Yes, I do.
Okay, simple. All right, we're going to jump over to Dean. Dean, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that that's an important avenue of health that we need to look at in terms of mental health. One of the other stats that I didn't have a chance to mention, just coming from Niagara here, is the mental health crisis that in terms of calls made from the NRP, there's over 2,500 calls in 2017, but in 2024, there's over 12,500. So, and that's a result of a number of things that are going on in the economy and a bunch of other things. But at the very least, we should be looking at how we can help people absolutely. We shouldn't be recommending MAID as like the first option, which has happened but with this government, but we definitely need to look at ways that we can look at prevention.
Okay. And Dave, I'm going to throw over to you. I'll repeat the question. Do you agree that all Canadians should be provided with suicide prevention regardless of age, disability, or mental health? Your time starts now.
Well, it's speaking to the idea that there is a high level of despair, and especially amongst our young people. We would definitely be in favor of promoting better access and availability to mental health care, but also the availability for proper palliative and pain care, and end the practice of euthanasia, known as medical assistance in dying, or MAID. It is no irony that the criminal code was amended under homicide to allow for MAID. And I think that's a great tragedy, and it's eroding the sanctity of life in our nation.
All right. Dave, thank you. And we're going to jump over to our third question here. Dean, I'm going to throw it over to you. What commitments has your party made to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Canada? And as a potential member of Parliament, what specific policies or initiatives would you advocate for? Go ahead, Dean, 45 seconds.
Thank you for the question. There's a number of things that we can look at as we are dealing with DEI. And certainly I think what we need to look at is making sure everyone has a fair chance when they have a chance to apply for work or whatever it is that they're doing. But everyone should be treated equally when it looks to coming to apply for a job or for looking for positions in companies.
Okay, thank you, Dean. And Dave, I will go back and repeat the question here. What commitments has your party made to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Canada? And as a potential member of Parliament, what specific policies or initiatives would you advocate for? 45 seconds.
The CHP absolutely believes that every life, human life, has value and should be treated with respect. However, we will also acknowledge, and is starting to be discovered around the world, that the aggressive DEI policies are akin to a type of communism or Marxism, and they've been abused and misused in such a way to foster a type of unfairness, and it has been more often challenging for young people and has created a higher level of despair and suicidal idealism.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Jennifer. Jennifer, what commitments has your party made to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Canada? And as a potential member of Parliament, what specific policies or initiatives would you advocate for? 45 seconds.
Thank you. So I would say DEIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. Everybody knows me as an advocate for marginalized groups. I would bring every voice to the table, but I walk the walk. So like I said, I volunteer with Special Olympics, I advocate, I volunteer tutor with adults with developmental disabilities. I would consult with groups that need a voice. I would bring that voice to the table, and I would bring results to those groups.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. I'm going to go over to our next question here. Dave, we're going to kick things off with you. Dave, housing is a top concern for Canadians. If elected, what specific actions will your party take to increase housing supply and address the current crisis? Time starts now.
So we've talked quite at length about that, so I'm going to talk about a couple of different things, and I hope you'll just bear with me. Central bank digital currencies must never become a sole reality in Canada. The privacy and freedom of our nation will succumb to Big Brother social credit systems that are currently being used by China to compel compliance. I would also say that God has created two genders, male and female. Biological gender cannot be changed by hormones or surgery. Many children have been harmed by the manipulation of those in authority using non-scientific theories towards a permanent mutilation of their bodies. Parental authority must not be usurped.
All right. Jennifer, I'm going to throw the question over to you now. Here we go. Housing is a top concern for Canadians. If elected, what specific actions will your party take to increase housing supply and address the current crisis? 45 seconds.
Thank you. So our party is going back to wartime housing. We are investing in modular housing, which we can build to scale. It can be fast, efficient, productive, and you can live with dignity. The other thing we are doing is giving incentives to housing developers to build rental housing with affordable components, and we will offset the cost for them. So that will provide rental housing. This will particularly help our seniors as they age. They can stay in their communities in affordable housing within the urban boundaries close to their necessities. The other thing I would do is education for tenants for renovictions and their rights under the housing laws.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, and Dean, I'm going to throw the question over to you. Housing is a top concern for Canadians. If elected, what specific actions will your party take to increase housing supply and address the current crisis? Go ahead, Dean.
Thanks for the question. Well, we believe that individuals, not government, should be building houses. We think that we need to remove the red tape. We need to make sure that it's efficient, and that's why we realize that the municipalities play a large role in that, and that's why we would create incentives for them to get that done. We also think that individuals, if we give them a break on their HST, maybe we could up to $100,000 on a new home. That would make a difference. That could create an incentive. There's like 6,000 government properties we would look at trying to sell off to do that. And then the last thing is to try and help make this happen. We've also committed to 350,000 spots in the trades because we do need more trades to make this happen.
Okay, Dean, thank you. We're going to go over to our next question here. Jennifer, we're going to kick things off with you. Canada is paying, oh, I apologize. Dave, I missed your wild card. Dave, go ahead, you have 30 seconds.
Canada's healthcare system has deteriorated significantly during the trying years of COVID mismanagement and unscientific mandates. Many Canadians do not even have a family doctor, and waiting lists for surgeries are too long. Canada needs to rehire and compensate doctors and nurses fired for refusing the experimental vaccines. Canada needs to speed up the process of certifying foreign-born doctors while maintaining high-quality standards, and more emphasis should be placed on preventative care and alternative medicine, not penalizing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Okay. We're going to jump over to our next question here. I'll actually finish it this time and not miss a wild card. Jennifer, we're going to kick things off with you. Canada is paying millions in interest every day because of our massive deficit. With so many new projects being promised, how does your party plan to fund them and at the same time reduce the national debt? 45 seconds.
Thank you. So one of the things I touched on earlier is the counter tariffs. The counter tariffs will help fund some of the projects that we are working on. The other thing we are doing is if we put money into the economy and into jobs, we will see the return on that, and that will help.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. All right, we're going to kick things off with Dean as our second individual. Dean, 45 seconds. I'll reread the question. Canada is paying millions in interest every day because of our massive deficit. With so many new projects being promised, how does your party plan to fund them and at the same time reduce the national debt? 45 seconds.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think one of the things we need to look at is some of the waste in government. We had a $400 million green tech fund, green slush fund. That money was sent out to individuals. They actually declared themselves almost 100 conflicts of interest. Imagine that. We gave $400 billion to a group of people that were nominated or appointed by Liberals, and they gave it to themselves. What a shock. I know, you guys are all surprised. I can't see your faces. We should turn up the lights so I can see that. So there's a lot of waste. That's one. I could go on and on. Maybe I should use my extra wild card here because there is tons of waste in government. Every day there's waste, and we need to do a good job and make people accountable, and we can do that. If we cut the waste, we can look at ways, and we can do a better job to make sure we have money for the things we need.
Thank you, Dean. Would you like to use your wild card?
Yes, sure, definitely. I'll use my wild card. Thank you.
So.
So let me talk about some of the other projects. I'm going to need more than 30 seconds, though. There's a climate action fund this government's given money to. And so quite frankly, what we see is $5.3 billion that has gone to countries that don't actually need the money. And quite frankly, their emissions aren't even as high as what they are here in Canada. And so when you start looking at following the money and making some accountabilities, a lot of this stuff has happened. There's all kinds of projects there that has had very poor oversight on, that we need to do a better job on.
Thank you, Dean. All right, and I'm going to ask the same question over to Dave. Dave, Canada is paying millions in interest every day because of our massive deficit. With so many new projects being proposed and promised, how does your party plan to fund them? And at the same time, reduce the national debt? Your 45 seconds starts now.
So Canada's debt is $1.2 trillion. Interest on that debt is $125 million every single day. Spending money we don't have is stealing not only from our children but our grandchildren, and we'll have to pay it back. Politicians are spending money that they don't have by using this to buy votes. Just look at the current gas prices. It's a blatant bribery, and this is immoral. The CHP would pay down the debt and introduce mandatory balanced budgets. There will be no longer deficit spending. It will be outlawed. Every government will be accountable to the people every year, and this has to end.
All right, and we're going to kick things off here on our sixth question with Dean. Dean, with so much economic uncertainty ahead, there is a huge concern for potential large-scale layoffs and job loss. How will your government, if elected, respond to this crisis locally to ensure displaced workers can make ends meet? Specifically, how will you protect workers aged 40 plus who have perhaps been in the same industry for 20 years or more? 45 seconds starts now.
Well, I think what most people understand is that our oil and gas sector, although it happens in places like Alberta and Saskatchewan, most of the manufacturing happens here in Ontario. It doesn't happen just here in Ontario, but a large part of it. So I think by getting our oil and gas industry going, by building pipelines, by developing our natural resource, or LNG, getting those to both coasts, we could spur on more innovation, more work here in Ontario, and I think that's important. We do have some struggles ahead. People have not had confidence in Canada. Our money's leaving. Investment dollars are leaving, and we've got to do a better job with what we have. We are a country blessed by large natural resources. We should use them, and we should use them to benefit us because they provide great tax money for us as well.
All right, we're going to go over to Dave here. Dave, with so much economic uncertainty ahead, there's a huge concern for potential large-scale layoffs and job loss. How will your government, if elected, respond to this crisis locally to ensure displaced workers can make ends meet? Specifically, how will you protect workers aged 40 plus who have perhaps been in the same industry for 20 years or more? 45 seconds.
Thank you. The CHP would propose a personal income security account for every Canadian at the time they enter the workforce. Rather than pooling the employment deductions of workers, the PISA would be a self-managed fund made up of workplace deductions from both the employee and employer, vested in personal savings account of each employee. It would be available when needed, up to a certain annual threshold, to compensate workers for time lost through periods of unemployment or disability, but its primary purpose would be to provide an adequate income for workers in retirement. The program would be optional for those who see its benefits and wish to take advantage of its growth and financial leverage over time.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, and Jennifer, with so much economic uncertainty ahead, there is a huge concern for potential large-scale layoffs and job loss. How will your government, if elected, respond to this crisis locally to ensure displaced workers can make ends meet? Specifically, how will you protect workers aged 40 plus who have perhaps been in the same industry for 20 years or more? 45 seconds.
Thank you. So one of the things we've done is eliminate the wait time on unemployment insurance. The other thing that's key for our area is the apprenticeship grants. And with the building of the modular homes, there's a facility right in Ancaster that's building them, BECC. So having the access to up to an $8,000 apprenticeship grant, anybody can retrain and get into a new industry that will have work for years to come and open more opportunities for them, especially 40 plus.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, and we're going to jump over to our seventh question here with Dave kicking things off. How will your government support meaningful reconciliation with Indigenous communities, particularly in addressing clean water access, housing, and implementation of TRC calls to action? 45 seconds starts now.
The First Nations people need to be treated like all the other Canadians. They need to have access to clean drinking water. We also recognize that before reconciliation, there needs to be truth, and the CHP agrees with that. However, we've been duped into mass graves and unmarked burials, which has now been proven to be a hoax, overblown by sensational media to elicit an emotional response. The result has generated nearly 100 church burnings and not a single conviction. This has greatly set back the cause for reconciliation.
Excuse me, that's not appropriate. I'm sorry, would you like to leave? Okay, good. Then keep it quiet, thank you. That's not appropriate. Okay, we're going to jump over to Jennifer. Jennifer, how will your government support meaningful reconciliation with Indigenous communities, particularly in addressing clean water access, housing, and implementation of TRC calls to action?
Thank you. So the first thing we need to do is educate ourselves in what the Indigenous believe the issues are and where we can help. One of the great things I did, the Grimsby Public Art Gallery, held a Truth and Reconciliation workshop, and human trafficking was talked about. So I think some of our crime precautions with human trafficking will help in that area. The other thing Liberal government is going to do is give First Nations consultation and rights as it pertains to water. The other thing we need to do is listen and learn and educate everybody in the best way we can so that everybody knows what we need to do, how we can do it, and how we can support.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, we're going to jump over to Dean. Dean, I'm going to repeat the question for you. How will your government support meaningful reconciliation with Indigenous communities, particularly in addressing clean water access, housing, and implementation of TRC calls to action? 45 seconds.
Yeah, thanks for the question. When it comes to resource development, we have not done a great job as a country, including our First Nations as partners. And quite frankly, because pipelines go through their lands and they're required to participate, or they should be able to participate, we need to include them economically. I think it's been a tremendous oversight not to include them in these resource projects. I think they should come on as partners. They should be able to participate in the wealth, and I think we should encourage First Nations to use their entrepreneurial skills. There's some First Nations out in BC that are doing a phenomenal job in terms of growth and business development, and I think we should continue to encourage them to do that.
Okay, thank you, Dean. And Jennifer, you gave us a wild card, so you have 30 seconds. Go ahead.
I'd just like to touch a little bit more on the housing. I had the opportunity to attend an AMO housing symposium where we were able to listen to Indigenous groups on how they're improving housing and wraparound services. And one of the things they need for that is funding. So I think we need to help fund, but I also think that we have a lot to learn from the models that they are providing and how it works. They are doing it well with wraparound services. It's working. So I think we have a lot to learn from their housing initiatives.
Thank you. Okay. All right. And that is going to be our next question here. Okay. Starting with Jennifer. The provincial and federal governments talk about building more homes faster. How are you going to ensure that major projects, such as water treatment plants, receive sufficient funding from all levels of government to put these other projects in place? 45 seconds.
Thank you. I think we need collaboration at every level of government. I think we have a disconnect and we are constantly blaming each other for the problems, and taxpayers and residents become the collateral damage in that. We need to build better partnerships, better relationships to come up with solutions that work for everybody.
Thank you, Jennifer. We're going to throw it over to Dean. Dean, I'll repeat the question for you. The provincial and federal governments talk about building more homes faster. How are you going to ensure that major projects, such as water treatment plants, receive sufficient funding from all levels of government to put these projects in place? 45 seconds.
Yeah, we have a model that has been used by all governments, Liberal and Conservative, the last number of years, which is a cost sharing of a third. I'd like to see more of that money available, and it's done a number of projects over time. I mean, there's been money that's gone into Grimsby and Pelham and a number of different places. If we're going to see the kind of housing that we need to have over the next coming years, we're going to need to invest in infrastructure. That's going to be one of the things. And if we don't want development charges to be high, then we're going to need to look at the federal government to help with infrastructure. And I think a cost-sharing basis, the municipality comes and says, this is what we need, and then the province and the Fed should jump in to help with that infrastructure so those homes can get built.
Thank you, Dean. Okay, and jumping over to Dave. Dave, to finish this question off, the provincial and federal governments talk about building more homes faster. How are you going to ensure that major projects such as wastewater treatment plants receive sufficient funding from all levels of government to put these projects in place? Go ahead.
And thank you. The system is already in place. It's called development charges. And so it's sometimes very simple to just say, hey, let's waive development charges. But that is the system. It uses growth to fund growth. And it's also very local. So we're not taking a national tax and putting it in those areas that are developing, but it's locally driven and locally beneficial. And so the system exists, it's development charges, and that's why it's important that that stays in place.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, we're going to jump over to Dean for our final question before our final statements. Just about wrapped up the night here. Dean, over to you. What is your stance on recent federal gun control legislation? And how would you ensure public safety while respecting the rights of lawful gun owners? 45 seconds begins now.
Well, I think that we should do a better job of dealing with illegal guns that are coming across the border. Look at most of the crimes done with guns involve illegal guns, almost 85%. Legal gun owners are required to have training. They're required to register their guns. I always find it funny that the government thinks that criminals are going to register their guns. I've yet to find a criminal that's registered their guns. So I believe that we have safety in place. The courses are rigorous. You are required to register. These are great systems, and as a result of that, I think the gun owners are some of the safest people that understand how to handle, they understand how to use them, and we should never unfairly target lawful gun owners.
Thank you, Dean. Okay, we're going to jump over to Dave. Dave, I'm going to let you answer this question here. What is your stance on recent federal gun control legislation, and how would you ensure public safety while respecting the rights of lawful gun owners?
So, speaking as one of those lawful gun owners, the CHP supports the right of peaceful, law-abiding citizens to own and use firearms for hunting, sport shooting, and self-defense. Violent crime is the problem, and efforts to curtail violence and loss of life should be directed at perpetrators and not at law-abiding gun owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. And we're going to let the question finish off here with Jennifer. Jennifer, what is your stance on recent federal gun control legislation, and how would you ensure public safety while respecting the rights of lawful gun owners?
Thank you. So one of the things we do is we have a system in place. In our municipality, we have a system in place where farmers can protect their farmland and their crops and stuff like that. I have no problem with a registry with people having a license, responsible people having a license. What I do have a problem with is assault rifles and high-velocity guns that people use in crime. So I support the gun registry. I support the gun ban. I think it's important to have in place, and I think it's important to have measures in place at our borders to stop the influx of illegal weapons as well.
Thank you, Jennifer. And why don't we give one round of applause to everybody, just as a thank you. One thing I do have to do, because this is something that's underrated, and we need to give it enough thanks. Thank you to Soar with Sarah and Train to Empower for providing the childcare this evening. For all of you parents, that's lovely. All right, okay, now we're on to our final statements here. So each of you will have 1 minute to give your final statements, your closing remarks. Now, if a candidate does have any unused wildcards, they may not be used in this round, as previously stated. You'll be provided the 10-second warning, and at 1 minute, I will call time and you will be asked to stop. Please keep it a sharp 60 seconds for everybody here. Jennifer, I'm gonna kick things off with you. Closing statements, you have 60 seconds. Go ahead.
Thank you. Today you've heard for what I stand for: honest leadership, community-first values, and a track record of getting things done. I'm not a career politician. I'm your neighbor, your advocate, and someone who shows up. Whether it's coaching para-athletics, founding a nonprofit, or serving on council, I believe politics should be about people, not partisanship. No matter how you voted in the past, Liberal, Conservative, NDP, Green, I'm asking you to vote for leadership that listens, cares, and delivers. Our riding deserves a representative who's focused on moving forward with real solutions. Canadians deserve leadership grounded in integrity and real-world experience. That's exactly what Mark Carney offers. On Election Day, vote Jennifer Korstanji. Let's bring new energy, honest leadership, and meaningful change to Niagara West together.
All right. Jennifer, thank you. And Dean, I'll give you your 60 seconds starting now.
I want to thank the West Niagara Chambers for hosting the debate tonight. You have a choice to make on April 28th. Will you continue to support a decade of failed Liberal policies that have led to many people choosing between heating and eating, rising crime right here in our own communities, the doubling of rent, the doubling of mortgages, the 2 million Canadians visiting food banks every month, or will you vote for a party that will bring down the cost of living and lower taxes for all Canadians? We will do this by permanently removing the consumer industrial carbon tax, by cutting personal income tax by 15%, and raising the basic exemption for seniors to $34,000. We'll axe the tax on new homes. We'll fix our broken justice system, including jail, not bail, for repeat violent offenders. We'll repeal the anti-energy law and rapidly approve LNG plants, pipelines, mines, and other major projects that will make Canada an energy superpower again. It's been an honor to serve you as a member of Parliament, and I thank you for your support over the years. On April 28th, I would like to ask for your trust and vote once again, as we have more work to do.
Thank you,
Gene
Dean.
Allison.
All right. And Dave, I'm going to give you your 60 seconds starting now.
I hear the concerns that are being raised, and I believe that Canada does not only have money problems, but has moral problems. The CHP is Canada's only federal party committed to the defense of innocent human life from conception to natural death. The CHP is committed to the restoration and protection of the natural family. Human freedom is essential for life. Freedom of speech, association, religion, and conscience. Any government that impinges on these fundamental rights is tyrannical. The CHP also supports locally grown food and encourages the research into regenerative farming. These are a few of the comprehensive policies of the CHP. The rest are found at chp.ca. On April the 28th, vote for Dave Bilsma and the Christian Heritage Party. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dave. Okay. Now, one final round of applause for all the candidates for showing up. They actually didn't have to, but they came anyway, so let's give them a round of applause. All right, and of course, Dave said it, Election Day is just 2 weeks from today on Monday, April 28th. Advance polls are open for 4 days starting this Friday, April 18th until Monday, April 21st. And a reminder, you are invited to remain and speak to the candidates directly outside in the hallway. However, we are requesting that everyone exit the building by 9 p.m. On behalf of the Lincoln, Grimsby, and West Lincoln Chambers of Commerce and myself, thank you for joining us this evening, and have a lovely night. Enjoy.